Hi guys. I've had a few people ask me about PvP crewing, and how to use which crews, when to use them, and stuff like that. And there's definitely a when to use which crew situation. I'll go through some basics, and then I will also go through a little bit of advanced PvP crewing. And then I'll finish us off with uh, a, uh, a a little guide on arenas and how to do arenas because I see a lot of people um, get very disheartened when they go into arena and there's people who are much bigger than them and they feel like they can't do anything. Stay till the end, I guarantee you. Uh, as I'll tell you this now, as the smaller of the ops levels in an arena, you actually have more influence than you think, and even more influence than the bigger guys. And I'll show you later how to do that. Um, cool. So basic PvP crews. We've got the strike teams, which are called Cat, Strike Team Lan, and Weiyun. Um, and yeah, they're your general. They're your basic strike teams. They only, worth noting, they only function on a specific type each. For a battleship, you'd use Strike Team Lan. I think I actually have a preset one. No, I don't. Um, and you would use this kind of thing. Now, I want to just chat. Yeah, so I'll talk about the isolytic additions to them in a bit. Cool. So this is your battleship strike team. There's one for interceptors, which is called Cat. There's one for explorers, which is Weiyun, and their respective teams. Um, Good to know on this is they will apply the corresponding state, like battleships like to have burning, explorers like to have morale, and interceptors like to have hull breach. And to go with that, you'll want some corresponding below deck officers. Now, the main ones that you'll just want to auto include onto them is you've got Romy, you've got Miss Q, and we've got Mariachi Q, and these, depending on what you have, they add an Apex variant. This will be an auto include onto whichever strike team you're using. So, if you're using a battleship, would use you might use strike team Lan. Then you'd use a Mariachi Q because if the opponent's burning, it gives you Apex, which is really good. Um, the rest of the below decks gets kind of up to you. When applying a state like this one, I like to add French Marshal Q. This is now our primary. This will be like your main ship. I like to stack combat repair, so I would grab those two. Because it's applying a state, Gwenda Marco gives you isolytic damage when enemy has a state. Um, and then you can Wahim gives you 500% isolated defense, which is amazing. This officer, I think, for most people, will be on away teams almost permanently. He's the highest stat officer in the game, where the priority one away teams use a lot of are incredibly stat hungry. Also, he's got the new traits, which the priority one away teams do need as well. So I think for most people, he'll be on away teams most of the time. When he's not, he's an amazing addition to your below deck. There is the Apex Shred question, and I have done a bunch of testing. I don't believe in Apex Shred. It is not calculated. Apex gives sort of diminishing returns on gaining more and more Apex. Apex Shred is factored in the 1 divided by 1 times the percent. So even 100% Apex Shred is only 50% reduction of your opponent's Apex. And because Apex is diminishingly, it's less and less good. Well, it's diminishing returns later and later on. It only takes off from the top. So you're removing their diminishing returns, if that makes sense. So removing even half of the apex from them uh, does not mean that you will do double as much damage. It's much less. You're just removing their diminishing returns. So I tend to really dislike Apex Shred, and I've done a bunch of testing, and it hasn't. It really has been underwhelming. That said, there are Apex Shred officers. There is Jojo, which gives you below deck Apex Shred against players, and you can add that. What I like to do is, and I want to talk about these straight away, is these two officers, Ikeb and Tuvok. Now, they say that if there is no state, it increases your apex barrier by a huge amount for 3 rounds cumulatively. So if it doesn't happen again, if for each round they don't have a state, and he does the same where he gives you apex isolated cascade. Now an important thing to note with these officers is there's a trick. Okay, so the trick is and this is even if they are going to apply a state to you on round one, you can still get these guys to proc. If you are the first person to click attack on your enemy's ship, in other words, you can both be clicking attack and both be moving towards each other, but if you are the first person to click attack on them, these will proc before you have a state, and they will give you 14,500 apex barrier right at the start, which is an incredibly important thing. It lets you build up all of your stuff. It lets you fire away. He'll let you like build up your defenses, anything that stacks, because a lot of these officers have abilities that stack later on. So you want to get to those later rounds. And he'll let you get to those later rounds. Just getting that initial 14,000 apex right at the start is really nice. Similarly, he'll give you the isolated cascade, which will let you kill them faster. Preventing their stuff from building up. So, but yeah, as I said, these are incredibly, incredibly strong effects, and you can proc them even when you are getting a state applied to you by pressing attack on the enemy's ship first. It means that you have to be very active if you're in arena or if you're in PvP. You have to be spamming attack on them, not having them attack you, or these won't proc if they're applying a state in round one. But yeah, so if they're applying a state even in round one, these will proc. Similarly for station defense is that they proc. Cool. So that's our strike team. Then you'll have Guldukat is for interceptors. Keep these. This is when on a battleship and fighting a burning player ship. So you need to tick both of them. You can't just have this crew on an interceptor and expect it to work. It's going to do nothing. Cool. Her ability burns. These guys also say while on a battleship fighting a player ship. So once again, needs to be on a battleship. While on a battleship. In other words, if you have this crew and it's not on a battleship, it's not going to do anything. Same with Wiyun. Same with Guldukat. Cool. I'm going to go over a second set of PvP crews, and that is the Mirror Crew. Important thing to note with this is you wanting to be most things to do with Mirror Crew are wanting assimilate. And assimilate will come from your data. And that's where you'll get your round 1, round 2 assimilate. You want, and for that you kind of want like a higher tier data. Tier 1 is like 50%, I think, something like that. But as soon as you've knocked them down below 95%, so quite early on in the rounds, in the battle, you can get Dzok to proc. Now this is the most important officer to go with the Mirror Crew. With Mirror Crew, you want Dzok. He's going to proc, and he's going to keep your assimilate going, which is going to then proc your apex barrier per round. It's going to proc this. It might proc your extra shots. This is a great crew, for instance. And And with this, your below deck can be similar kind of things because you are applying a state, so you can have things like Gwen DeMarco, which works really well because these often have large isolytic damage. Gwen DeMarco increases the isolytic damage. You can also have things like French Marshal Q, requiring a state. They have a state. Assimilate counts as a state. If something requires a state, assimilate will count. You know, something like this kind of crew, super crew. Cool. Then we've got a this yeah. Then we've got a Carol. Then we've got Carol crew, and Carol is Carol Freeman. Carol Freeman also wants a state. Typically, what people do is they will put something like Lorca here, but consider if you are on a battleship to put Jojo, because burning synergizes a lot with battleship. There's things that proc. There's artifacts that proc for isolytic damage. There's a bunch of things that proc. You can get like hull repair, I think, or something like that. Typically, what people do is they'll do a crew like this, and this will be, and then with your, if you're doing burning, you can put something like you'll put your RHQ, because once again burning, and the same kind of below deck vibe. Burning will apply, or if you're using Lorca, which a lot of people do as well, then you do the corresponding hull breach ones. Cool. And generally, there is a bit of a rock paper scissors between these three crews. Is generally Carol crew will beat the strike team crew. The Mirror crew generally beats Carol crew, and strike team generally beats Mirror. This is assuming all things are equal, which they almost never are. But these are a rock paper scissors. If you see someone using this crew, and if you see someone, for instance, smashing everyone with Carol, and you want to try and out crew jitsu them, you can try the Mirror crew. If you see someone using the strike team, you can try, and it's thrashing your Mirror crew, switch to Carol crew, etc. So there's a rock paper scissors there. Cool. Then there is the ultimate crew jitsu situation with the retaliation crews. These crews don't depend on what ship you put them on, but rather what ship you're facing against. If you're seeing someone with a super strong battleship, for instance, outside or cube outside your base, you can try and hit them with something like this, and this means that they've got incredibly strong effects, but they're only against a specific crew. Personally, I actually use these a lot in arena because at 66, most of the fights that we fight against are cube versus cube, or the cube is the big thing, and I use this. And in arena, her burning ability, her ability to hull breach doesn't require you to be against anything. It can hull breach anyone. It's only the captain ability that works against battleships, and this works against any players with hull breach. So you still get these two officer effects, which are very strong, and she hull breaches. You just don't get the captain ability against explorers or battleships. Against explorers or interceptors. Against battleships, you get this massive punch up mechanic. And with that, you do the same kind of below deck as you would have for someone like if you were hull breaching Lorca, where you'd have like Romy below deck, maybe some state stuff and whatnot. Cool. Those are the other. So yeah, the other retaliation crews would be Soren is one. He is the one that burns against explorers. So you have a chance. His captain ability will burn. With synergy, it burns 100%. And then if you're against explorers, so if you're against like someone with a massive enterprise or something, you can bring this kind of crew and absolutely dominate them, because it's just incredibly strong against those specific ones. and then the last one is Starfleet Q. But just watch out for this one because anything that works off morale has a bit of a caveat. Although that is less so now, and I'll speak about that in a minute, is because people, as I was talking about these really strong officers, these two, is they proc off of people using applying if people don't apply a state to you, and morale doesn't apply a state to you. It doesn't apply a state to the opponent, only applies a state to you. So these officers, if they're against you below deck, will go absolutely nuts versus any morale build. But here's the caveat: that isn't necessarily the case anymore. When you've got this ability where if you really wanting to use morale builds, uh, you have now this ability when you level up Khan is 40% on round start if you have morale to apply hull breach to the opponent, which will then give them a state. It's not a massive chance, 40% for 2 rounds, so that's definitely not by no means going to be 100% uptime, but it is significant to the point where morale crews are maybe usable, although dropping that state at any you won't apply that state in round one, and you probably won't apply that state in round two either. So not so good, not so good. That's up to you. It is possible. There are a bit better now than they used to be, but they're still rough. Akeb and Tuvok kind of make morale builds very difficult. Also, there's a lot of things that work off, if your opponent has a state. There's a couple of abilities in Lorca where I think this is against hostiles. No, this is against anyone. Increases critical hit chance. There's a lot of things that you wanting to be applying a state. If you want to apply a state, if you really want to run a morale build and you also want additional help to keep a state up, you can also use something like DZOC below deck. You're not going to apply that state in round 1 or 2, maybe you in round 2, but that's going to basically maintain your assimilate up on them, which is a state. So that's a way to get around playing with morale builds. So between DZOC and the Khan Fleet Commander, you can actually potentially run morale builds again, maybe. I haven't done extensive testing there, but it's possible. Cool. Now I want to go and talk a little bit about Arena. As all of those builds are all very relevant to if you are the top player in Arena, and I'm going to explain this now. When you're making a team for Arena, you kind of want to maximize a level spread. Optimally would be 4 levels apart. So you would have one person that's 66, one person that's 62, one person that's 58. This would give you the optimal spread and give you the highest chance of not getting facing against 3 level 66s. Or basically it'll take your average down to 62 and you'll more likely find a team that's either doing what you're doing, which most people are, or they might be 363s or 362s, and then that's an auto win at that point because your 66 is just going to crush them. So try and structure your team to have a average score that's as low as possible, and you do that by making a four person gap. Public matchmakings are amazing in that you can make a group. You can just cycle through people until you have a group composition that you like. What I've also done is I've also managed to, when I find people that I enjoy playing with, I've, then chatted to them and been like, hey, find our Discords, and be like, hey, on a Monday I'm going to run some arenas. You want to run some arenas? And often, you can link up with people. Use the public matchmaking to make friends, and then connect with people that you enjoy playing with. And then reconnect with those people later. So those crews are for effectively the big player who's going to actually do the killing. And this is where actually I don't enjoy being the big player. I've got strong crews, I've got strong ships. I don't enjoy being the big player because I find it's a lot a lot more actually rides on the smaller players. I know it doesn't sound right, but a lot more rides on the smaller players than the bigger player, in my opinion. Bigger players just have his strongest ship with his strongest crews. That's all he can do. If they kill the opponents, whoop. If not, you lose. But as the smaller players, what you can be doing is you can be effectively what you want to do is you can crew up a loot crew with an impulse crew, something like uh, something like this, which is going to give you 100% loot from armadas and hostiles, and also going to put you at the impulse speed cap. And you can put this on a Cerritos, or you can also. I like using a Cerritos and a Mantis, and this one would do another loot crew, right? So another impulse plus loot crew. So always just try to get 100% loot, so that you can do one armada into one big armada, um, and that would be Doctor. Something like that would give us some impulse and loot. And what you actually, as the smaller player, you are going to be the one who decides who wins and loses if you match up against an even team. Because what you're going to do is you're going to go into the arena with your two ships that aren't going to win fights. It's not your job to win the fights. You're going to buff your big player, buff your biggest ship. Then you're going to sting their biggest ship. You're going to kill two hostiles, one hostile if you can get one of the loot beetles. You're going to start your armada. What you're wanting to be doing is you're wanting to join the armada with both your ships. Once they're joined, they're registered to join. You're then gonna, try and dodge if someone's coming for you. You're going to if someone's chasing you, you're going to kite that person into your biggest ship. There's no point running away from them and having them chasing you while your big ship chases them, and you just occupy all of the time of your big ship. Rather, kite them into the big ship, let them kill them, go back to the armada. If you registered in the armada, if you click join and you've registered, you can then kite around, and if when that armada is less than 10 seconds, if you just move into the circle, the second you're in the circle, you become invincible, completely invincible. Whereas if you just start it remotely, don't join, then you want to time it so that you join just before 10 seconds. Because if you join it after 10 seconds, it's gonna not register you in the armada. It's gonna fail. But if you've joined, left, now you can join anytime within those last 10 seconds. You can be kiting around the enemy and just nick in. Cool. As you're in the circle, you're invincible. You can be doing that with two ships. You can be kiting around things. You can be stinging them. As you can see, there's so much that you can do. And I can tell you now, your big player, if you kite your enemies into him, if you buff him, if you sting your opponents, you are going to have an infinitely higher chance to win your arenas. Plus, it's something for you to do. You don't sit there bringing your biggest ship, which doesn't measure up to their biggest ship, and just like, okay, I'm just going to die. So what I generally do is this, and after I've buffed my guy, I will sort of like be very aggressive with my Cerritos, but while I start this stinging them, and if they kill the Cerritos, I will generally then bring in one strong ship, and the strong ship can also then do some. I can try to hunt down the people my ops level, while this ship is killing hostiles and starting armadas. This ship can be cycling around, trying to maybe snipe their mantis, try to snipe their buff ships, and anyone can see any level, any low ops person will be able to kill their Cerritos, will be able to kill their mantis, and the amount of impact that has on an arena is staggering. If your guy hasn't got a mantis sting on him, and theirs does, your guy has a much higher chance to win that fight when they come head to head. All that you need to do is is buff your guy, sting them, and that. Now I understand, like a lot of people are going to maybe be short on juice, buff juice or sting stuff, consider saving your stings for Mondays. It really does help. But yeah, these are ways that you can help and have a massive impact, even more impact as the big player. Big player, all he can do is chase the big ships, and that's his job, and he must do that. But he can't do anything more than that. He has to be the one killing their ships. You have to be, as the smaller player, you have to have a lot more responsibility. You've got to start the armadas, buff them, buff your guy, sting them while kiting the opponents into your big ship. So everyone who thinks, "Oh, I'm small, I can't join, I have no impact," you have more impact than the bigger player. If you can understand what I'm saying. Cool. And then I just want to finish off this video by doing a quick thing on a base cracking crew. Personally, my favorite base cracking crews, as I said, I love those. I love those too. And I then like to do a crew like this. One sec. One sec. I like to do a crew like that, and then that'll be effectively when there's a full set of ships home, because of the Bajoran favor that increases critical hit chance, they're going to be critting against you all the time. Trip is incredibly important, and these just give extra shots. And in order to trigger the isolytic damage, which is quite important, you can add, as I said, you can add that Dzok below deck. Your Wahim is amazing for this. Though he might be on away teams almost all the time, as mine will be. So this is generally what a base hitting crew would look like. What I would do, what I like to use for a base hitting crew. This though is because a lot of people have at least one point in this, which then cancels out Rom's ability. Though now we do have through the Alliance tournament, we have access to the Prime Station delay, which then stacks an additional shot onto the Rom's ability. Which, if they only have one point in that Lorca's ability, then Rom plus this will give you a round of station delay, which is incredibly important. So then you'd swap Rom in and use something like something like Lorca. But and then obviously once you got two of these plus Rom, that's three. Then even 2 levels in the Lorca's ability won't cancel that. So I like to use that kind of crew. You can start off with this, see if you're getting any station delay. If you're not getting any station delay, I would use that. If you are getting station delay, grab that. Grab someone like I like using like that. And this is when all ships are home. Once ships are empty, and once you can now crit, because each ship that's home reduces your crit and increases their crit. Once down to like 3 or 2 ships, you can swap out to that, and then you'll finish the base very quickly. Cool. That's a bunch of PvP stuff. Long video, but hopefully everyone finds something that they like out of it.